So I send the writing. I pick up the writing.
So there's some here. You know who you are. Just fill in. Thanks, you guys. 5 minutes.
That, maybe?
So I know I've been up here a lot, but I'm just curious if you guys are ready. You guys ready? Okay. That just warms my heart. I know that was for me, so thank you. So just to give you a quick idea of what's going to be happening tonight, Brandon's going to be coming on in just a few minutes. He's going to have a quick presentation. You will all be enthralled, I promise. If not, fake it. After that, he's going to do a Q&A, and we're going to have some microphones set up on the sides, and we're going to have a microphone on the balcony up here on the side. So if you have a question, he'll tell you when to line up. And for those of you who are not familiar with the Brandon Sanderson signing, this will go late. Is this a surprise for anyone? Yeah, I figured not. We do have to be out of here at 2 a.m., I believe, so we will do our very best to make that happen. The books are pre-signed, so if you're looking just to get your book and hear the presentation, you'll be able to get that as soon as you get the book in hand. Outside of that, after the Q&A, there's going to be a 15-minute break while we set up the signing table, which is just going to be right up here. So please bear with us as we're preparing for that. And if you haven't had a chance to wander around the areas, we have a bunch of games on the sides, some made for kids. There's an awesome Light Lance game over here. While you're waiting for your number to be called for the signing, wander around, go talk to some of the wonderful artists we have out there. We have Brian Mark Taylor, Howard Lyon, Miranda Meeks, and Steve Argyle. I'm sure they want you to come look at their art and praise them because it is awesome. We also have Brandon's online store here if you're looking for leather bounds or shirts. They're going to be just in this back corner. And if you're interested in entering to win Brandon Sanderson's Mega Bundle, and you have some extra books that you brought or you want to donate for some raffles, they're doing a giveaway at the Lightweaver booth just around the corner right here. And yeah, we want to thank Barnes & Noble for helping us with this signing. And Badali Jewelry is also here. So if you're looking for some jewelry, they have some awesome stuff there. So I'm assuming you guys are all tired of talking to me. Please don't clap. I already know. Okay, that's what I thought. Without further ado, Brandon Sanderson.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for coming out. We changed venues this year. There are a bit much of you for in the bookstore. Clap for those wonderful cosplayers, if you would. Yeah. So they are going to be around doing photo ops. If you get bored of waiting in line, you can go get a picture with them if you'd like, and things like that. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to blab at you guys for around 45, 50 minutes, something like that. If you've ever been to one of these before, you know, you give Professor Sanderson a microphone and he starts talking. This is what happens. And basically, I'll talk about something that's a little bit related to the book. But again, if you've been to these before, they aren't terribly always that relevant. But it's what I'm thinking about at the time. After that, we will do a Q&A for a little bit. I'll just call on people in the crowd, and we'll do that for a little while. And then I have a reading for you. I will read to you from Stormlight Book 4. So, yeah. Yes. So the Brandon blabs at you part. All right, so thank you very much. Thank you very much. I kind of specifically wanted to address the teens in the audience tonight about something I've been thinking about, which is a lie that I tell you and have been telling you. This is actually a lie that's very common. A lot of media is going to tell you this lie. and I've been thinking about it a lot lately. The lie is actually that you can do anything you want, and you can be anything you want. This is a really cool phrase, right? You can do anything. It sells books really well. It sells media really well. Things like that. The problem is it's not true. And to kind of explain why and some things about this, let me tell you some stories. We put up on the screen right here the first award I ever won. This happened when I was 18 years old. What happened was I was in high school. I was going to my AP English class, and my teacher walked in, and he was a good teacher. I really liked this teacher. He did not get sci-fi fantasy at all, but he did his best with me. And this is a sign that he was a good teacher. Someone put in his box a flyer for a writing contest, a local science fiction fantasy writing contest. And he looked at it, and he thought, and he walked to the classroom, and he put it on my desk, and he said, "I think this is for you." And I had been writing stories off and on, but I'd never really thought about showing them to anyone. In fact, I famously, I've told this story before, I would write on a story or something, and then I'd be so nervous that people would read it that I would hide it behind the picture frame in my room so no one found it. I was very shy about my writing, and this was the first time I ever showed any of my writing to anyone. I wrote a story, and I submitted it to this writing contest. The story itself is on my website. You can go read it. It's really bad. But for an 18-year-old, it wasn't too bad for one of his first efforts. And I won that writing contest. I took, there were 5 entries, and I took first. We start small, right? And I overcame quite the obstruction in doing that. You see, I accidentally, after I won my award, they gave me $50 though, by the way, savings bond. I went up to talk to the organizers of the contest, and they said, "Yeah, your story was really interesting," because we were reading it, and we thought, wow, he's doing some really avant-garde, really interesting, weird thing with this. And then we realized you had stapled your story backward. And it wasn't a weird avant-garde thing. You just took it right out of the printer and stapled it and turned it in. And yes, I had done that. So they rearranged it and read it in the right order. And somehow I still won the prize. I have no idea how that happened. But that gave me a taste of victory. And so years later, when I first broke in, the next award I was up for was the Campbell Award. And we can go to the next slide. The Campbell Award is given at the Hugo Awards, right? It is basically the Rookie of the Year award. And I really wanted to win this award, right? It was the second award I'd ever been up for, and I won the first one. So obviously, right, I can win this one. Now, there is something going around this time where I had gotten published, and another author had gotten published right around the same time. His name's John Scalzi. And some of you might know where this is going, because it was this weird thing where that year after Elantris came out, everywhere I went, everyone was talking about John Scalzi. And I went to multiple bookstores to sign my books, and I don't know how he'd done it, but he had always gotten there first, and his books were on display signed before me. And he's right next to me in the alphabet, and I started to say, who is this Scalzi guy, right? Who is he? I even, started, every time I encountered him, started saying, Scalzi! And shaking my fist toward the air in kind of a good William Shatner imitation there. And then the Campbell Award nominations came out, and the short list, and lo and behold, Scalzi was nominated. And I'm like, Scalzi! Who is this guy? So I read his book, and that was dangerous because his book was really good. I don't know how YA appropriate it is, but it was really good, and I'm like, oh no. And my friends and we all went to the convention where the award is given out, and lo and behold, John Scalzi won the award. Now, this isn't that big a deal, right? You lose some, you win some, but the thing is, the Campbell Award, you're only eligible for 2 years, and the next year I lost to Naomi Novik, who's another fantastic writer. And that was it. No matter how much I wanted to win the Campbell Award, I could not do it. It just couldn't happen. And this is kind of relating to this idea, right? We say, chase your dreams, you can do anything. But you really can't, right? Like, we all understand that deep down. Like, what if you would ask me when I was a teenager, what do I really want? Nothing's off the table, what do I really want? I'd be like, I want a pet dragon, right? I mean, obviously, right? No amount of dreaming and hoping and wishing and working really hard would get me a real pet dragon. I could get a stuffed animal, yes. You know, I could become a fantasy writer. But there are things you just can't do. And I worried sometimes that in writing fiction, we focus on this idea of how important it is to chase your dreams. And I talk about it a lot, right? I chased my dreams and became a novelist, which was, you know, not that easy to do. And it worked for me. And sometimes I worry that, you know, we have this message of just go chase your dreams no matter what it is and go for it. And then we're surprised when people get discouraged and things like this. Like, it's kind of a downer, isn't it? To have a speech, my big book launch, super, let's get all riled up speech being, no, you can't. That's not really what I want to get into, but to make everyone a little bit happier, I did bring a picture, let's go to the next one, of my nephew. Next slide, please, in a Doomslug outfit. So, yeah, maybe that'll make everyone a little more happy. So why am I bringing this up? Well, I think the issue is, the thing that worries me, the thing that bothers me, is that when we say, just chase your dreams and go for it, we actually ignore a lot of the practical side of what going for it means. And that's what I want to kind of talk about today, kind of talking you through me writing books and what going for it means to me, because I write some big books, right? I write some smaller books and I write some larger books. And the book I'm writing right now is Stormlight Book 4, right? Many of you are waiting for that. These books are really hard to write. To give you a visualization for those who may not have launched into them, let's go to the next slide. So the Hunger Games trilogy, all 3 books together, is 300,000 words, right? And then the next slide, the Chronicles of Narnia are about 340,000 words, the entire series, right? The last Stormlight book, next slide please, was 450,000, right? Don't applaud me. This is I get together with like Brandon Mull and he's like, you realize that one of your books is like 10 of mine? And I'm like, yeah, but you know, it's hard to write short, and it really is. But I love big epic fantasies. This is just, you know, I like to do a lot of different things. That's why you're here, to read Starsight, because I kind of have this thing where once I finish a book, I need to write something very different, to try something new, to refresh myself. But the thing I keep coming back to are these big epic fantasies, kind of my first love. And they're really big. And it's very easy, if you maybe wanted to be a writer, like I wanted to be a writer when I was young, to look at some of these very, very big books and be like, well, I want to do that. And then run into the reality of doing that is really hard. And not a lot of people talk about doing it. They say, go chase your dream. I tried chasing my dream with the first book that I tried writing when I was a teenager, and it was an enormous disaster, right? I had no idea how to accomplish something this huge. In fact, it's good that I got this thing on my desk that said, submit a short story, because I'm like, well, I guess I should write one of those. And that proved to be a nice stepping stone helping me out. But at the end of the day, like, I want to do this. How do we do this? What do you do in order to actually achieve your dreams? Rather than just saying, go for it. You can be anything. What advice would I give? And so I've kind of boiled it down to kind of 3 ideas that maybe will be helpful for you. Hopefully, there are young people here who are like, I do want to chase my dreams, Brandon. What would you recommend? And the first thing I would say is, you gotta learn to break it up. Point number 1, how do you write a book the size of Oathbringer? You actually write it in a lot of the same ways that you would write a very short story. And that is, you break it into manageable pieces. You just do way more of them. Oh, yes. You just do way more of these pieces for a large book. And now it's not that easy, right? Because you have to maintain all of these interlocking and interweaving plot lines, which takes practice. But that practice is its own quantum, right? It's its own thing you can divide off and say, I don't know how to become, like when I was doing these things, I'm like, I want to become Robert Jordan. How do I do that? No idea. Well, one of the ways you become Robert Jordan is you start writing every day a little bit and you start practicing. You break down the monumental, well, did I get that one right, Peter? I did, didn't I? You break down the monumental task of becoming a professional author by first starting on learning how to construct a good paragraph, how to put a scene together, and things like this. Like, I don't want to tell you, don't shoot for the stars, but I also want to tell you, if you want to get to the stars, there are some steps you need to take along the way, and you should focus on those because you can approach those. You may not be able to approach writing Oathbringer, that size of book. In fact, the second time I tried it, I was a well-established author. I hadn't sold yet, but I knew what I was doing, and I failed then, too, because doing a book that big is just really hard, even for someone who by then had written Elantris and had written a bunch of books that were pretty good. So if you want to do this, the realistic side of it is break it down. Ask yourself what small steps you can be taking today that can point toward that. But that's not the whole of it. Point number 2 is learn how to trick yourself. This one is really important. And this is the one I don't think we talk about nearly enough. Right? We may talk about, go chase your dreams, but we also like to pretend in society, at least I've noticed, that we pretend that there are people who do and people who don't. And they're just like almost the sense that there's this imaginary dividing line, and you're either on this side, you're an achiever, you're a go-getter, or you're not. And I don't believe that at all. I don't believe it one bit. What I do believe is there are people who have learned how to trick themselves into doing things they want to have done, and people who haven't yet figured that out yet. The secret is it's different for everybody, but for me, we all want to be sitting and playing video games, right? Yeah, right? Or reading books, or we don't want to go to the gym. We want to be a famous author, but we don't actually want to write books, which is kind of an essential step in there. In fact, if I talk to my writer friends, the majority of them will say, I don't actually like writing, but I like having written. I actually do like writing. I enjoy it quite a bit, but the issue is, for me, when I have to buckle down is when I have to revise. I hate revision, right? Absolutely hate it. If this is part of why, if you guys have heard, I wrote 13 books before I sold one. And part of the big reason for that was I would write a book, I would be like, oh, that was fun, I'll put it aside and I'll write another one, and maybe that one will be better. And instead of learning how to make the books I'd written into publishable great books, I just always wanted to be done with them. And whatever it is you do, the thing that you want to shoot for the stars, there will be parts of it that are not very fun for you. So no matter who you are, you have to learn this trick of how do you trick yourself into having done what you want to do. Like I said, I don't think we talk about it enough. And this is partially because I think it's really individualized. Like what motivates people can be really specific to you. I can tell you what motivates me. So what motivates me is spreadsheets. Doesn't sound very exciting, does it? My mother's an accountant. She trained me well. And this will actually make a little more sense when I explain it. I really like keeping track of my daily word count and watching it count toward a goal. You ask why I have the progress bars on my website? Because I was doing that even before I was published and had a website. Because if there are any of you here who like video games, how much fun is it to watch your experience bar inch towards something that you, right? Like going out and killing 1,000 rats to gain level 2, that's not fun. But that ding when you become level 2 and you get a new magic spell, that is fun. You don't want to kill rats, you want to have killed rats, right? And the video game makers know very well how to motivate us by showing things counting up. And I found that if I create a spreadsheet that shows me counting toward a finished goal when I'm revising, if I'm like, all right, if I do 10,000 words a day, that's the book is 100,000 words for something like Starsight, and then that will be 10% a day, and I only have to do 10 days of this, and I can watch it count up, and then bing, I've got the reward. The book is better. People will enjoy it more when they read it, and I will have done the thing that I want to have done. This takes work, figuring out what it is that actually motivates you. It takes experimenting. It takes practice. It's difficult, but it's way easier than simply saying, I want to do this thing, and then go, and just assume that the intrinsically nice nature of it, the intrinsically valuable nature of it, will motivate you. I'm religious, right? I want to read my scriptures every day. For years, I'm like, I want to read my scriptures every day. That's really good for me. Really, I wanted to have read my scriptures every day, right? Because that would be really good for me. And for years, I just wasn't doing it. And yet, it only took a little tweak. When I started, I made a habit of, well, before I start typing on my book that day, I have to have read my scriptures. And that's my reminder. And it became a habit. I just started doing it, right? And now it's been decades where I haven't forgotten because the thing I already do basically every day, I just put this in front of it. Now, I think there's this sense in society that if you were truly virtuous, you would just want to do that, and you would go, and you would lose track of time, and 7 hours would pass, and you'd be like, oh, that's what Isaiah meant, right? And maybe there are people like that, but they're not me. For me, I needed a daily reminder and something that I already did every day and just slot this thing into it. And suddenly, it's been decades and I haven't missed a day. Tricking your brain is the actual secret to success. And then I would say that the last one, kind of to wrap this up, the last thing that I thought of is, you know what? Be willing to change your goals. If as you go along, you figure out something you want better or something that's more realistic. We don't talk about this basically ever, right? We say chase your dreams, not chase your dreams until you realize they're unrealistic and then settle for something that's a little more plausible, right? But that is actually a really good thing to internalize. The difference between giving up and reassessing. The difference, like, whatever it is that you want to do, once you get involved in it, you will learn and grow and become better and realize, right? When I was a kid, I played trumpet. And I had goals of becoming a trumpeter, right? The more I practiced and the further I got, the more I realized what I liked about playing trumpet was having the community of band in high school to be my friends. And the actual trumpet playing was fine. But I didn't need to become a professional trumpet player. In fact, I really didn't want to because practicing the trumpet was not very much fun. And beyond that, all the things that I would put in place to make me do it, I just didn't still enjoy it. Yet when I would write books, I would find out that once I got myself doing it, hours would pass and I would feel really satisfied and fulfilled after doing it. When I went to college, I changed my goals. I said, you know what, I'm not going to continue doing the trumpet. It did what I wanted it to do. It made me good friends in high school and gave me a nice group. And now that I'm in college, I'm done. I'm going to focus on writing. I have never felt like I gave up because as a more experienced and mature person, I changed my goals based on my experience. And this should be okay to do, right? This is a secret to success, I really think it is, to learning to, as you get more experience and you become wiser, saying, well, this is what I actually want. Why did I want to win the Campbell Award? Because I was very worried as a new writer that I wouldn't make it. I'd heard that a lot of new writers publish their first book and vanish. That's why I wanted to win the award. And when I kind of dug down into that, I realized, you know what? I can still make that happen. The award doesn't matter. And in fact, my friends, after there's a big party at the convention afterward that's the Hugo Losers Party is what they call it. And I was sitting at the Hugo Losers Party, and by the way, George Martin walked by. He writes the Game of Thrones books, and he says, don't worry, kid, I lost that award the first year it was offered. And then he gave me a little badge that said Hugo Loser on it, which is very nice, that I could wear around. And then my friends came up to me, and let's go to the next slide, and they had gone to the Lego store and built me a Hugo rocket out of Legos. And that's John Scalzi. They had him sign it, and they gave me the first ever Scalzi Award. Yeah. Peter, you were involved in that, weren't you? Yeah. Isaac? Was it Isaac? Oh, yeah. Well, there's my Scalzi Award. And you know what? I'm much more happy with my Scalzi Award. And we can go to the next slide. I did eventually win some Hugo Awards, so we do have that going. But for me, you know, my life has been about learning to break down what I want to do, trick myself into doing it, and then deciding if it's really what I want to do. And after I'd been involved with this a long time, I really came to the decision, what do I want to do? I want to write epic fantasy novels. I had no control over whether I would become famous or successful or not. The only thing I had control over was I writing books that I really loved. And that's that's become my guiding light. Keep myself focused. I moved my goals. My goal was to keep writing books that I love no matter what, that was very liberating. Very liberating. I've never really had to take jobs that I didn't want to take. I've always taken jobs I've wanted to. I've always worked on books I've wanted to because my goals are focused on doing what I sincerely think is going to make me the most happy, and that is writing the books. And as a kind of caveat to the end here, I did eventually get my dragon. Now, dragons aren't real, yes, but I sat and I thought, you know, what makes me like dragons? If I boil it down, well, they can fly. That's cool. They are basically flying dinosaurs, right? They can talk and they're intelligent, and they look cool. I thought about that for a while, and next slide, please. I went and I bought a parrot, right? who is super cute, and he talks, and he is a flying dinosaur, quite literally. So I hope this is helpful to you, and I hope that you can kind of use this to kind of cut through the lie that you can do whatever you want and see the truth behind it. Because the truth behind it does mean something. When people are telling you this, they're saying, you can achieve great things, and you really can. But also, be a little practical. This is what my mother, the accountant, taught me, that a little practicality tempering wild expectation and dreams is what actually makes it happen. Thank you guys very much. Now, we are going to do a Q&A. While we're doing it, I'm going to have my son bring me out my water, or, yes. His job is to be the water boy. Thanks, Joel. I knew I wouldn't be able to hold it and my notes at the same time, but I can do that and this. So if we'll bring the lights up a little bit, let's do a Q&A. Now, while you're thinking of questions to ask, I would ask you to not ask spoilery questions, right? Pretend that you are the only person who has read a given book that you're asking a question about in the entire room, and you don't want to spoil it for them. I will repeat the questions, or do we want them to come? We have a microphone? Oh, great. Where are the microphones?
We have one microphone on each side, and then we have one up in the balcony in that corner.
All right, how are we going to determine who asked them? Okay, let's get like a couple people to line up at each of the microphones, and I'll just go one mic to the next mic and things like that. And we'll start over here, and then I'll go over here, and then I'll go up to the one over the corner there. So there you go. Go ahead. Oh, it's not on. Okay. It sounds like it's on now. Yep.
Is soul stamping a form of corrupted investiture?
Is what a form?
Soul stamping?
Is soul stamping a form of corrupted investiture? Not in most instances, but it is possible to make it such.
All right.
Yes. All right, question over here. Oh, we need that microphone on. Go ahead.
What would happen if Azure's sword was wielded against Nightblood?
If Azure's sword was wielded against Nightblood, terrible things would happen. But Nightblood would be the stronger of the pair.
Okay.
Good question. All right, up there.
What is the name of your parrot?
My parrot's name is Magellan. The reason we named him Magellan is I'm building an office that is themed toward kind of an explorer's club, so we want an explorer-y name. And as soon as I came up with it, my wife and my children said, "Oh, you could call him Jello because he looks like a bowl of Jello." So actually, he is called Jello by everyone in the house. As I wrote in my newsletter, we are still working on teaching him not to think that ears are something tasty. He's a baby right now. It'll take us a little while.
Okay, so in the Nalthis system with the cognitive anomaly, does it orbit the star, or is it stationary in space?
Is Nalthis
the cognitive anomaly.
Oh, the cognitive anomaly, does it orbit or is it stationary? Raffo. Good question. You can pick up a Raffo card, though. We have them. We'll go get one for you. Okay, over here.
All right, what would happen if Nightblood was drawn inside of a perpendicularity?
So it depends on the perpendicularity. He has a good chance of collapsing it.
Ooh.
Yes. Up there.
When will the second Arithmetist book come out?
Oh, when will the second Arithmetist book come out? Adam, the posters look great. I didn't even see those. Okay, so here's the deal with the Arithmetist. Arithmetist was the book I wrote right before the Wheel of Time hit me like a train going very fast, right? I was not expecting this in my life. The books I was working on at the time were The Lyre of Partenel, which is Hoyd's backstory, and The Arithmetist. And both of these books got derailed to one extent or another by me dropping everything and working on The Wheel of Time. And when I sat back down to write The Arithmetist too, I had been derailed for so long and so much had happened in my life that the outline I had just did not work. I wasn't pleased with it. It is one of the things that I consider a mandate that I must do. I will finish it, but it's gonna take me a little bit more time. I've been slowly clearing off, I've been trying to write things like novellas that don't promise sequels as much and finish off the things that did promise sequels. So I finished off Legion. The last Alcatraz book is basically done. It is called Bastille versus the Evil Librarians, or subtitle, Alcatraz versus his own dumb self. We're actually sending that off for artwork and things, so that should happen pretty soon. There's like one little scene that needs to be revised. And then Arithmetist will be on the list of things to do, so I promise it someday, but I'm just not sure when. Stormlight 4 is going to take all of my time for the next 7 months still. Most likely. I won't be done with that until July 1st. And then I really need to get the next Wax and Wayne book done. Yes, I know. And there are 2 more books of Skyward that I need to write, so... So, we'll see. My biggest goal is to whatever I do, not let myself slip behind on Stormlight books. because these kind of form the backbone currently of the Cosmere sequence. And so those can't come out less frequently than about once every 3 years. Once every 3 years is about as fast as I can do them. They take about 18 months, and I need about 18 months off between them, otherwise I'll get burned out. So there's an answer that's not a full answer for you, I'm sorry. It will happen, I'm not sure when. All right, over here.
Do you know what Spence's favorite color is?
Do I know what Spence's favorite color is? Yes, blood red. Yeah, that one's pretty easy. Go ahead.
I love audiobooks. Do you give the narrators for your books on Audible coaching on proper nouns?
Yes, we do. This is usually something that Peter handles, right? Karen does it. This is something that Karen does. Once in a while, they get me with a tape recorder, but usually Karen and Peter and Isaac are all reading the books so far ahead of time, and Karen and Peter and my writing group, and they're hearing me say all the names and things. They can usually just rattle them off. You can thank them. They are very particular with the audiobook readers and making sure that we get good audiobooks, because in the past, before we had as much control over things, sometimes we got audiobooks we weren't as pleased with. That doesn't mean that the audiobook readers will always pronounce everything the way I do. This is partially because sometimes I pronounce things different ways at different times. This is also because sometimes we get them too late. This is what happened with the Stormlight Archive, where sometimes Kate Redding and Michael Kramer will pronounce a name differently. They're married, but sometimes we don't get the names to them in time, and they just kind of go with what looks good to them. So we apologize for that sometimes, but we try. Oh, thank you. Yes. All right, go ahead.
What's your favorite idea that you're never actually going to get around to writing?
That I'm never, or I am eventually?
Either or.
Either or. What's my favorite? I always talk about my favorite idea that I haven't written yet, which is the idea about the magic system that's based on diseases. Like when you catch the common cold, you can fly, but when you get over it, you lose the power. Which I just think would be kind of cool and kind of chaotic. I had another idea the other day that was really cool, but it was for a video game. And if I tell you, it would spoil it, so I'm not going to tell you that one. But I don't know if I'll ever make this one, because video games, I don't know if I will ever be able to make video games. I have tried, and it has not worked. So we'll see.
Do you know what the Starsight book is the main idea of?
What's the main idea of the Starsight book? Yes, it is. In fact, I write a little quote in the front of most books that I sign, and in Starsight, I'm writing 2 words. It's called "see them." Now, you won't understand that till you get that part in the book and explain it. But when you do get to that, that's kind of the theme. That's what the book is about to me. So when you read that word, those words in the book, you'll know that you've gotten to it. Telling you too much now would be a spoiler. All right, go ahead.
How does arithmetists draw a Marx cross structure if they can't cross their own lines of forbiddance?
Yeah, so you can get it right up close, and I kind of made it in my mind that if you get right up close, it kind of snaps together. That was my workaround for it, that you can get up and make it, but you can't actually. It's like a magnetism thing where you can kind of push into it a little bit. Does that make sense? The harder you push, the more force it pushes back on, though. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Yeah. So those were my workarounds in my head. I had to come up, that one actually didn't strike me until I was halfway through the book, and I'm like, hey, wait a minute. How do you actually make this line work? And so I kind of put those 2 things on it. So that's the in-world reason, but I didn't talk about it a ton in the books. Up here.
So it's known you're a big fan of the Magic the Gathering.
I am.
And that you like House Demir.
Yes.
And you wrote Davriel Kane's Planeswalker. Are you ever going to work with Wizards of the Coast again?
Yeah, go ahead.
And then, things about Magic, it's known you play some. Where would we find information on that?
So will I ever work with Magic again? I probably will. I usually can't leave well enough alone. But the thing is, I wrote that story, which you guys can read. It's called Children of the Nameless. I wrote that. It's free online. Instead of doing other stuff I was kind of supposed to be doing. And it is what has put me behind, on Wax and Wane, which I wanted to have done before the next Stormlight. and stuff like that. So it's not likely that I will do it anytime soon. I need to catch up on things. What I would really like to do is sometime kind of go in at the planning stage for a plane, like right at the beginning, and maybe even like write a book and be like, this is set, you know, on a plane. Let's use this to build the mythology of a plane or something like that, and kind of be in from the ground up on it. But I would probably have to move to Seattle for like 6 months for that. So that's far off in the future. But if you want to play Magic with me, once in a while I play at local game stores. I go to Game Grid now and then. Mostly I like to draft or to cube draft. You can watch me cube drafting online. The latest newsletter has a link to a place, some people I went and drafted with. But it has been harder and harder. Early in my career, like when nobody knew who I was, it was great because the signings would get done at like, you know, I would get there at 7, they'd get done at like 8:30, right? And then I'd be like, hey, who wants to play Magic? And there'd be usually some people that are like, yeah, let's go play Magic. We'd go to like the hotel and we'd sit in the lobby and we'd play Magic and stuff. Nowadays, my signings get done at like 4 a.m. And so, yeah, that just doesn't happen as much anymore. Sorry about that. All right, go ahead.
So I'm an aspiring writer, and I really relate to one of your characters that has really smart days and really stupid days. And I feel like I've had maybe a handful of really smart days, and every other day I just feel like an idiot and I don't know what I'm doing. I wonder if that's you writing maybe some of yourself into the story or into that character?
Yeah, totally.
And how have you gotten over those stupid days?
I actually got it. Howard Taylor, who's a cartoonist friend of mine, one time was talking about on our podcast how some days he just feels dumb. And I'm like, I feel like that sometimes too. Sometimes it's not working, it's not flowing, and what I found with writing is, now your mileage may vary, but what I found is readers can't generally tell which of the two it was. It's more in your mind and more about your mood than it is about the actual quality of what you're writing. And what's happening is, on some days, you're just upbeat and you see what you're doing is is working. And on other days, you're doing basically the same thing, but you're a little bit down and your mind's like, oh, this is terrible. You are crap. No one's ever going to want to read this. And the truth is that it's actually still pretty good. The other thing that causes that a lot is, particularly if I'm reading something really good, like I go read a Terry Pratchett novel, and then I go to write and I'm like, what am I even doing, right? But what you're doing there is you're comparing your first draft to published final drafts by authors who've been doing this for 40 years. And that's just not a fair comparison to you. If you want to go read my terrible first story that I wrote, the one that won the award, you can read that and be like, this is what Sanderson was writing? I'm better than this. And you probably are. In fact, I hope you are. And I would recommend trying to silence that voice as opposed to trying to reach for the smart days or not, because the truth is you're probably just as smart on both days. You're just feeling down. And instead, try to look for some of the things I talked about earlier, the idea of creating good habits, knowing the things that you can do that put you in the mood to actually do what you want to do. Listening to music will do it for me. Going on a walk if I'm having trouble while listening to that music, and it's the right epic music. My playlists are on Spotify, by the way, of the stuff that I do this with. Just look for Stormlight 3 writing soundtrack, and I have one for Skyward too that I think I posted. Just listen to whatever works for you. But you have to find out what tricks yourself, like I talked about earlier. But every writer feels this. You are not alone, and that part of your brain is probably wrong. Okay.
So on Earth, we have like snakes that have heat pits that can sense heat, and bugs that see into ultraviolet.
Yeah.
On Roshar, are there varieties of kremlings that can see
investiture? Yes. Is that one is there someone up there? Yeah.
What criticism of your work do you feel is the most apt?
What criticism of my work is the most apt? There's a bunch of them. I would say that the criticisms of my handling of Matt and the Gathering Storm are pretty on point. I actually had an inkling before I released the book that they were, because some of the beta readers had told me, but I didn't know how to do it better yet. Generally, my weakest part of my books is probably going to be the prose. I strive for what we call Orwellian prose, which is window pane prose, where the prose is transparent and you can see the story happening on the other side. But a lot of times, if you come to some of my prose, I repeat too many words too often. We try to watch for those and things. But you're not going to go to a Brandon Sanderson novel and very often get the really beautiful prose that you're going to get like from a Pat Rothfuss book. For instance, or something like that. And that's just kind of, it's partially a stylistic choice on my part, but it's a stylistic choice because I know where my strengths lie, if that makes sense. And so I think that's a pretty valid criticism. The other thing would probably be that Stormlight is really hard to get into. And that's not by design, and that I don't want a book that's hard to get into, but the story I wanted to tell was one that was hard to get into, if that makes sense. And it's kind of like a drawback of the story that I didn't want to change because it would make it a different story, but it's totally a legit drawback to getting into the Stormlight. There's a lot of stuff to track. I wanted to be upfront with it because the whole series is going to involve a lot to track, but there are people for whom the Stormlight is just not the book for them, and that is just okay. Let's go over here. Let's do one more round. So I'm sorry for everyone waiting in line. We have to get to the reading, and we have to get to the actual signing. You can ask me a question when you come through the line if you want to. So I'm going to do one more from each. So go ahead.
Is it true that there's a mural of the Cosmere in your basement?
Is it true that there's a mural of the Cosmere in my basement? There is not a mural of the Cosmere in my basement. Isaac is painting a mural of the Stormlight Archive Roshar map, but that's not in my basement. There will probably be a mural in my basement as we're finishing the office, but it's probably going to be is it a Van Gogh? I think it's going to be a Van Gogh. Yeah, go ahead.
All right, I have a friend that snuck this question into me, but is Mbot your ideal own pet dragon, essentially?
Yeah, Mbot's pretty close, right? Yeah. I've mentioned before that Mbot came from me basically writing a dragon story, but with a spaceship instead, so yeah.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
If a Mistborn were to burn a piece of a shard blade, what would happen?
So this would be hard to make happen, but it would be possible. Shardblade is going to act as basically an alloy of the god metal of honor. And so what would it do? Raffo, but it is possible and it would do something. It would not just, it would not be inert. It would be allomantically viable. So there you go. Yeah, thanks guys. All right, so I'm going to go to the reading, but before I do the reading, a couple of little announcements. Have they prepared you for photos yet? Probably not. What we do for photos, if you come through the line, you can get a photo with me. Someone will be there to take your camera. They will count to 3, and I will look up on 3, right? So we do the picture first. So basically, get into position where you want the photo. The person will count to 3, and I will look at them on 3, and then I'll turn back to signing. And I'll be signing your books during this. I'm like a trained Pavlovian dog. You can watch. It's really fun to watch Brandon look up on 3. If you do want to do that, have your phone out. Have it set to picture, not video camera. There are a lot of 3-second videos of me staring at a camera smiling on the internet. So your books should all already be signed and numbered. These signings go long. I generally move at about a rate of 100 people an hour. We can try to move that faster, but there are 1,500 of you here. If you run those numbers, it is probably going, who knows when Isaac and I will get done. By the way, Isaac's also going to sign your books. He's my my art director. He does a lot of the illustrations and stuff. That's who that is that's sitting next to me signing the books. You're welcome to take off and find me at another signing another time to get it personalized if you want it. Be warned, it could go late. We have things for you to do, but I'm hoping that all 1,500 of you won't stay to get books signed because we will be here until like 10 in the morning tomorrow or something like that. So, but we'll play it by ear and see how it goes. I don't think there's anything else I need to announce, though I do, as always, want to kind of go down my team for you guys so you can applaud for them. We've already done Isaac, so Isaac. Yep, there's Isaac. Isaac did the maps for Skyward, and what you did the what's that? Brian Taylor did the Starsight map, but you also did the with your daughter the little MBOT stickers were given out and stuff like that. We have next to him is Peter Ahlstrom. You can always find Peter in green. It's his favorite color, and in fact, we do most of our shirts we sell in the store, we do in like specific colors, but he gets green versions of them. He is my editorial director. He's in charge of editing. He manages my beta reads, he edits all my blog posts, and he edits all the books and manages the copy edits. Very, very important person. He makes sure that I use the right words. So we also have Karen. Karen is our continuity editor. She maintains the wiki that's only inward-facing, not the ones you find on the internet, but is our wiki for keeping everything. She makes sure that everything's on time, like meaning the book's timeline is happening right. Skyward's dedicated to her for that reason. Let's see, where is Adam? Is Adam around anywhere? Adam, hey, Adam. Adam is my publicist and kind of personal assistant. He gets me where I'm supposed to be and things like that. And we have Kara. Kara puts together events like this. She's also kind of in charge of our store and all of our product line and anything like that. So if you have a cool thing you want us to make, talk to Kara. If you want to volunteer for things like this for some crazy reason, talk to Kara. So let's also applaud for the volunteers. There's a few other people that are here that you may want to know. My parents are both here. They're sitting right down here. My wife is around somewhere. Has anyone seen her? She's around here somewhere. She's around. She's off doing stuff. You can see her. She's our business manager. Did I forget anyone, Kara? No, Peter, did I forget anyone? Jane, oh, my sister's here. She's doing she runs our charitable foundation. She's got a little booth, doesn't she? Yeah, she's got a booth with foreign editions. Is that what she's doing, or what is she? Oh, she's doing a raffle. Okay, so she's doing a raffle for foreign editions. My lovely sister Jane. And we will also thank the bookstore, Barnes & Noble. Yeah. Putting together one of these events and stocking it with books is a really, really big thing, and it's really complicated. And the bookstores are never quite sure what to do with us because, yeah, it's a little crazy. So I appreciate them very much putting up with all of us doing weird things. So about this chapter I'm going to read, it becomes really hard as the books progress to read chapters that are not spoilery. And I prefer to read chapters that are not spoilery. So if you want a chapter that's more spoilery, you can get the one from the newsletter where it's got a proper warning on it. Here, I'm going to read to you a chapter that won't spoil very much from the books. What that means is that sometimes it's not the characters that you're hoping to hear from when I do the reading, because where they are in book 4 will give away things that happen in the early books. So I'm going to read to you from the flashback sequence from this book, and the flashbacks are being split between Eshonai and Venli. Now, there's some things to be aware of in this flashback. The first is that when I wrote this, I was specifically trying to get the tone and character right, because I wasn't sure if I was going to do Eshonai or if I was going to do Venli. Turned out that I decided to do a hybrid between them. But what that means is when I wrote this scene in particular, I wasn't really even planning for it to go in the book. It was what I was doing is searching for the tone, which means that it has some continuity problems that I knew about even when I started it. For instance, I think there might have been more people with Eshonai when this event happened, mentioned earlier. It may not happen at the time or place that it says in here. Basically, a version of this chapter will end up in the final book, but the actual exact details around it might change a lot. The flashbacks tend to go through some of the most rigorous changes because of continuity, because, you know, we have a whole timeline that Karen is very good at keeping track of, and when I write a chapter like this, I'm just not paying attention to it at all. I'm just ignoring it because I want to see if the character works. But we're going to just see briefly from Eshonai here. Eshonai, if you don't know, is the Parshman, the Parshendi. She's on the cover of the first book. She's the person that Dalinar, who's in armor, is saluting. Eshonai had heard it said that mapping the world removed its mystery. Some of the other listeners in her camp insisted that the wilderness should be left wild, the place of spren and great shells, and that by trying to lock it down into paper, they risked stealing its secrets. She found this to be flat out ridiculous. She attuned awe as she entered the forest from the back way. Closer to the shattered plains, almost everything was flat, grown over only by the occasional rock bud. Yet here, not so far away, was a place where trees grew in abundance. She started her map by going around the perimeter of the forest until she found the river on the other side. Now, after a few days of walking, she intended to head back along the river until she came out on the other side, closer to her camp. Everyone had been so worried about the storms and her being trapped in them alone. But she had been out in storms 12 times in her life, and she had survived just fine. That had been without the forest here. These trees made a wall before the storm, like the walls that had once encircled the 10 camps. Those camp walls had fallen long ago, like most of the ancient listener creations. That was proof. You couldn't steal the secrets from nature simply by exploring them. The mere thought was laughable. Yet listeners could create mighty walls. Yes, listeners could create mighty walls, but they were a poor imitation for what nature presented. This forest had likely stood when the ancient city at the center of the plains had been new, and it stood still now that the city was little more than a scattering of lumps in the creme. She settled down near a rock, unrolled her map, and made from precious paper. Her mother was one of the few among all the camps who knew the song that outlined the steps in creating it. With her help, Eshonai perfected the process that made certain her cases were sealed against the rain. She used a pen and ink to sketch the path of the river as it entered the forest, then dabbed the ink until it was dry before re-rolling the map. Though she was confident, resolve attuned, she did admit that the complaints of the others had seemed particularly bothersome to her lately. We know where the forest is. Why draw it out? The river flows this direction. Everyone knows where to find it. Why bother putting it to paper? You try to capture the songs, but the songs aren't meant to be trapped. Save writing for marking debts. Don't force something as alive as spren to become something as dead as a sheet of paper. Too many of her camp wanted to pretend the world was smaller than it was. She was convinced that was why they continued to squabble and fight with the other camps. If the world consisted only of the 10 camps and the ground around them, then fighting over that land made sense. But their ancestors hadn't fought one another. Their ancestors had united. Their ancestors had turned their faces to the storm and marched away, abandoning their very gods in the name of freedom. Well, Eshonai would use that freedom. And with her maps, she would show the others, expand their minds, bring them with her next time she visited the forest, and would show them the wonders out here. They would sit by the fire and complain that she was stealing cultivation secrets away, never experiencing the beauty she offered, never knowing the best wonder of them all, the ultimate question. What will I discover next?
The river wound through the heart of the forest, and Eshonai mapped its course, using her own methods of counting the distance and rechecking her work by surveying sites from multiple sides. It flowed after high storms, but often continued for days once one had passed. Why? When all the water had drained away or been lapped up, why did this river keep going? Where did it start? Once she had this map done, she intended to head all the way up the river, further than she'd ever gone before, and try to figure out its origin. Rivers excited her. They were markers, guideposts, roadways. You could never get lost if you knew where the river was. She stopped for lunch near one of the bends, and there discovered a type of kremling that was green, like the trees. She'd never seen one that shade before. She'd have to tell Venli. Stealing nature's secrets, she said to annoyance. What is a secret but a surprise to be discovered? Making a map didn't lock down or constrict the wonders of nature. Nature would keep on changing, growing, and providing new wonders. All a map did was provide a path to experience them. Finishing her steamed haspers, she put out her fire and continued on the way. By her guess, she could travel through here only a day and a half before reaching the other side. Then, if she rounded the other side of the forest, she'd have a finished picture of how this land looked. It might take months of work after that to map the interior of the forest, if it could be mapped. How would she keep from getting lost without the river to guide her, the edge of the forest to mark a barrier? Such an intriguing problem, such a wonderful problem. There was so much to see, so much to know, and so much to do, and she was going to discover it all. She was going to... What was that? She frowned, stopping in her tracks. The river wasn't particularly strong right now. It would likely slow to a trickle by tomorrow. The trees grew far back from its banks, evidence that the flood during high storm was dangerous. That could be so loud she could follow it from a distance just by listening. Now, though, the water made barely a gurgle. And over it, she easily heard the shouts in the distance. Had others come to find her? She told them not to expect her back soon. She hurried forward, in part overjoyed. If someone had come after her, perhaps they were growing more willing to explore. It wasn't until after she was almost to the sounds that she realized something was very wrong with them. They were flat, no hint of a rhythm, as if they were made not by listeners, but by the dead. A moment later, she rounded a bend and found herself confronted by something more wondrous and more terrible than she'd ever dared to imagine. Humans. And there we go. Now, just another warning, I know some of you are recording this, that has huge continuity problems, which what's come before. I was really searching for getting sure I had Eshonai's voice and that I would be interested in making these flashbacks work, making sure that they would be really interesting to read for this book. So don't expect the final version to be quite like that. That's just to cover Karen. She hasn't edited this or done her continuity edit, so you can't come to her and say, but Karen, Brandon said in the previous book that, don't worry, I know. So we're going to actually go to the signing now. I'm going to walk out, and they're going to get everything ready. They'll tell you how to line up and things like that. You're totally welcome to take off and find me another time. Either way, thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you so much for reading.
Okay, Brandon's going to take about a 10 or 15 minute break. All of you should have a wristband that has a number on it. We are going to be playing a PowerPoint that says which numbers we're currently signing. So it's going to alternate with the prize winners. So check that PowerPoint, see if you're getting close to your number. We're going to be lining up in groups of 50. So we want the first 1 through 50 wristbands to line up. We'll get the lights on so that people can see. There's a sign right there. You're going to line up and you're going to go around up that ramp and stop this line right here, okay?
And congratulations, I'm back. I know you were all dying for that. So, thank you. If you were trying to pick up your book earlier and you were told your number was missing, please go back. They have that sorted out and you can go pick up your book now. And just as a reminder, we have games on both sides for kids and adults of all ages, so go enjoy yourself. We also have some vendors out there, some great artists, Badali Jewelry, Barnes & Noble. The Mountain View High School is doing, has some food out there if you want to support their sub for Santa. They have some candy and stuff. But yeah, enjoy yourself, and the signing will begin shortly.
If it's going to be a while before it's your wristband number, please feel free. There's games on either side. There's all kinds of other booths to go check out, and you can just kind of come check on this if it's getting close to your number. But please check out all of the other booths that we have set up. And one final announcement that I forgot to make earlier, the Alcatraz illustrator and artist Haley Lazo is also here. So if you have Alcatraz books you want to get signed by the artist, please find her. Isaac, do you know where she is or will be? So grab a psychic. That psychic will take you to her, and she can sign your book. Lost Fences back corner. Okay. And if there's a lost and found, if you happen to lose anything, over by the volunteer entrance as well.
guys.